Welcome in, everyone, to the first episode of True Odds, a prediction markets podcast. I am one of your hosts, Mikey Markets, and on my left on the screen is my man, Joey Rockets. Joey, how we doing, brother?
Doing great. I'm excited to finally launch this. I know we've been discussing it for quite some time, and the day has finally come.
The day is here, and the new frontier of, betting, trading, sports gambling, they all fall under this degenerate index, degenerate economy, as our founder, Howard Lindzen, likes to term. But we're going to dive in on the prediction markets week to week. Really excited. We're going to be scouring the Polymarket website. There's way more markets in here than probably we even need, but super exciting stuff. And, I'll just start for a new audience. My background is in sports. I worked for Chicago Sports Network. I worked for Bleacher Report, where I was mainly focused on the betting accounts. So in essence, I give you a job description. I'm just a degenerate gambler. That's who I am. I'm really excited to tap into this new frontier because I get to learn from you. You have a background in trading, so give the people a sense of your background and how you plan to help me and the audience.
So I have a pretty unique background. So, I've spent the most of my time as an equity analyst for the last 13 years. Most notable stop was multiple years at the Motley Fool, both as a freelancer and in-house analyst. But, it all started as fantasy baseball. I was really good at fantasy baseball, statistical analysis. And my father was like, you're so good at this, you should try the stock market. And, it was just a wild transition going from, batting average to price to earnings multiples and things like that. But it just became an addiction. So now with prediction markets coming back, it's kind of like I've come full circle where I can mix equity analysis with statistical analysis. And we've got earnings markets, we've got football lines, like everything's here.
Everything's here. I'm super excited for it. And obviously you have a background that's unique to me. I mean, I feel like growing up, all I did was watch ESPN, SportsCenter. So we did the same things. We just took a little bit of a different path. So this is going to be fun, right? I'm going to bring, a more sports betting lens to a lot of this. But even as I've learned in, 2 weeks in using the platform, this is a different ball game. So if you want to give the audience a little insight on what makes a prediction market a little different than a sports betting market, I feel like that's a good place to start.
So what I love about this, and I'll bring earnings market specifically, is, the outcome can be one thing, the reaction can be another. But with prediction markets, if you're betting on an earnings beat, all that company has to do is beat earnings. You don't have to think about what the move is going to be after the fact. So, you have multiple times many times where a company will beat earnings, outlook disappoints, the stock tanks, where you were right to, place a bet or, make an investment going into those earnings because you thought they would beat, but the stock reaction did not, work in your favor. With this, it's a specific outcome. And you're just going with those odds. Same with, sports betting is significantly different because so many different variables come into play. But I think that's what's very unique about this. And, you don't have the ability to parlay and everything else where people make it, or, overcomplicate a situation. Maybe that's
burn their money, basically.
Yeah, it's one of those where, you're very sure on this. You feel like you're sure on 7 different things. Oh, let's combine them all. It's fascinating to see like the mind of the degenerate gambler. And, I'm more risk averse when it comes to sports betting. I'm almost like, if I'm going to put $100 into Polymarket, I also want to put, $100 into the SPY. But that's what's going to make the show so great.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be like a two-headed monster because right now I'm feeling like I want to be risk averse. I want to learn this. I want to really dive in. And then 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be like, how do I just maximize as much money as possible? So I'm going to need Joey Rockets to keep me on the rails a little bit. So let's dive in. We'll get to our first segment. And this segment is called The Slate. This is a segment where we'll really kind of take a deep dive on all the markets that Polymarket has to offer. And one of the funniest ones that we've discussed kind of pre-show is, will Time's Person of the Year be a human in 2025? I feel like as I said that, I'm like, this can't even be a real thing. But here we are, right? Time is going to announce their person of the year by the end of the year, and it's looking like artificial intelligence is going to be on the cover of that publication. So talk a little bit on your side from like, you know, a trading and investing perspective. Like the growth of AI over the last handful of years has been unbelievable to watch.
It has been incredible. You know, it's transformed almost every industry. So I have a background in writing and equity analysis. And, you know, I can actually train AI models to learn my tone, learn my style just by feeding it some articles. And I could say, you know, write an article about this in my tone. It spits it out in a minute, what would take me hours. I've even run where I ask it to run to figure out what the terminal free cash flow rate of a company is. When I used to sit and do this for hours at a time, it took it maybe 2 minutes to analyze everything, spits out all of the data that it used to do this. And it's just incredible. So I could see where, you know, we also have to look back at the history of who's been Time Person of the Year. And we have had multiple times where it's not, you know, a specific person, but a group. So I saw like one where it's like the protester or frontline workers. So I think the most fascinating thing is, you know, will it be human? And so I had to look up the rules. Like, could it be something, you know, could the Time Person of the Year not be human? And sure enough, it can be. So, you know, I think this should have been the Time Person of the Year, maybe 2023, you know, after ChatGPT launched 2022 and it just kind of took the market by storm.
Yep.
But I guess it's the whole ChatGPT versus Gemini 3 and, you know, how it's just transforming every industry, everything that we use on a daily basis. So I definitely get why this is the leading candidate right now. It's
bizarre, man. I'll just be honest. When the AI revolution began, I was like, I'm out on this. I remember watching. We watched these movies when we were kids, right? Like, there's gonna be flying cars in 2030. Like, we're getting kind of close to a lot of that kind of stuff. But I think about like iRobot. Do you remember iRobot, like the Will Smith movie?
What's crazy is Elon Musk's, you know, like
it looks just like
bus, the same exact thing, the Optimus robot. I'm like, guys. So I've been rewatching Demolition Man to almost prepare for what's going on. 'Cause, you know, it's not going to end well. We've all watched Terminator. We've watched everything. Like, this is not going to end well for us.
It's wild. I mean, but I will agree with you on the fact that like it makes, you know, work a lot more efficient. It's a helper, right? And we've heard the stories of like people are using AI for therapy. People are getting in trouble using AI for therapy, right? Like there's a lot of just like the Wild West going on. So it sounds like we'll be probably getting some more regulation in the years to come. But if you're asking me, like, it's hard for me to argue because artificial intelligence has been widely used now. I don't think it's even just a couple years ago, people were like, I don't know. Now, like, everyone is using ChatGPT. Everyone is using Gemini. And if you're not, you're like kind of behind.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's one of those where, you know, it's like, think of when it goes from writing by hand to writing by computer.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to be up with the times and at least have an understanding of how to use it, how to prompt AI, how to train it. Because if not, you are going to be left behind, especially depending on what you do for work. You know, if you're not utilizing AI, you're going to be the person that's replaced by the AI prompt engineer that's hired by your company.
This is classic. If you can't beat them, join them. I'm living proof of it. I'm like, I'm going to just do this myself. And now it's like, if I could get 15 minutes back at any corner of my day, screw it. I'm doing it. So it's definitely something to watch for. Time usually, or I think Time last year released like a short list of, you know, the candidates, basically the nominees. They did that on December 12th. So could be getting a list pretty shortly here. Obviously, we're recording this on Tuesday to release on Wednesday. So more to come on the Time segment. It's really interesting. I didn't think that was an option, but there's some candidates on that short list that, you know, probably have some value potentially as well. All right, let's move on to some sports. This is really fun. We're going to get to talk sports every week. The college football playoff bracket is now complete. And first and foremost, I'm going to take my opportunity to dunk on Notre Dame because Notre Dame fans everywhere, executives, board members, they're all so mad that they got left out. They did not make the college football playoff bracket. And there's some controversy involved. Alabama gets in after losing by 21 in their conference championship game, all but signaling that conference championship games do not matter. And then you turn the page later that evening, Indiana beats Ohio State. They move to 1. They get the top seed in the bracket. So a lot of movement. Our friends at Polymarket have this market. And there's $3.4 million worth of volume in it. So if people are saying that no one's using Polymarket, they're lying. That's a whole lot of money. And 32% of which, so the bulk of the market is on the Ohio State Buckeyes, even after they lost to Indiana. So we see where the money is. We see where the teams are. Joey, I would love to know, who do you think is going to win the college football playoff and why?
So I was looking at this, and I know Ohio State is the favorite, and they've got a very good team. My grandfather went to Indiana, so, I would kind of want to lean that way. But, I have to look at the statistics, and I can't help but think Georgia is they're just set up so great. I was looking at their ranks in the SEC, the number 2 defense, allowing 15.9 points per game. Incredible, given the scoring teams out there. And while they're putting up 31.9 points per game on offense, making them, I want to say it was number 7 in the SEC. Plus, then you look at, the last 5 years, Georgia's just been absolutely dominant. So they've got the experience. The coaches won't be frazzled in any situation in the playoffs. So I just look at them, and while they're at 16% and Ohio State is double that, I think this is one where I would want to place the buy on yes. And as this line moves significantly higher, like maybe when it gets closer to the championship, if they make it, this is at 48% instead of 16. Then I would take some off the table and do that, or you can cash out. But I just think they're going to make it significantly farther than people think, and I just see them as champion.
Yeah, man, I don't hate that play at all. Georgia somehow quietly this year, and I don't know if you've ever been to like a game that Georgia was involved in. It's never quiet. These like fans, they bark in the street. They played Alabama in Indianapolis for the Natty a few years back, and I can still hear the barking in my ears. It was just so annoying, but they're so crazy. And like, you're right. They do have the experience. They've won multiple Natties. They've been to multiple Natties, right? They have the experience. Kirby Smart, great coach. Do not hate this play, and do love the kind of caveat that like, maybe they get to the semifinal and there's some money that you can take off the table and ensure that you get a little bit of profit. I'm going to go a little bit wild card here. I'm a Big Ten fan, based in Chicago, family roots for Michigan fan. So I hate Ohio State, not taking that. Indiana's path isn't that great. I think if you're looking for some big value, this is not financial advice. I'm not telling you to do it, but for my money, I would look at Oregon. Oregon is at the top of the bracket. They're going to play James Madison, which is a great story, by the way. Group of 5 team, only 1 loss. They get in as the 12 seed. The interesting part here is the first round matchups are going to be played on campus. So James Madison, little old James Madison, is going to have to go to Eugene, Oregon and play in front of those Ducks fans. So that's going to be a tall task. I think they get past their first game. Then they got to match up with Texas Tech. When you think about the competition level in the Big Ten versus the Big 12, I'm going to pick Big Ten. So if they can get through JMU, get through Texas Tech, now you're talking about, if you buy yes early, feels like it's a pretty good long shot for them to win it all, but you will have an opportunity if they win those first couple games to take some money off the table. So I don't know. I like the Ducks. I think the Ducks are positioned in a nice way at the top of this bracket. And I don't know. The last thing I'll say is it's kind of tough. It's got to be really tough to be an Indiana fan. You just finally beat Ohio State, and now they're not even favoring you to win the whole thing. So if Indiana is as good as they looked over last weekend and they make a run, that would obviously foil both of our plans. But I like Georgia. I think Oregon is an interesting play. Before we move on, what do you think? Long shot on Oregon. Is this a waste of money?
No, so you're taking a very similar stance as I am, where we think our teams will get further then people tend to think. Now, I have a significantly harder bracket, but I think if Georgia can get through Ohio State and, maybe face Indiana or Oregon, that gives them the best path here. So, no, I can't argue with it. I like it. And it's not Ohio State, which
and it's not Ohio State, which we agree on. So love that. We'll see how it goes. We obviously have a few weeks ahead. A lot of these numbers could move. The interesting part is the bracket begins in earnest on the 19th. So we got a little bit of time, about 10 days. If there's any injuries, if there's any news that comes out, coaches leaving, all that stuff will probably factor in. So more to come on the CFP. All right, let's move on to some earnings plays. Joey, this is when I sit back and I get my education. So explain it to me. You don't have to explain it to me like I'm 5, but there's some earnings plays this week that are really interesting. So I'm going to give you the floor and let you cook.
So earnings season has, it's almost come to a close, but there are some very interesting companies reporting that are left. Now, I picked some of my favorite, and the only issue is the poly markets aren't ideal for total return. So we'll start with Broadcom, absolute monster in the semiconductor space, over $1 trillion market cap. When you want to say, a company is cooking on earnings, this is a perfect example. So I used Gemini, and I was basically like, hey, pulled the last 10 earnings reports, earnings results versus expectations, 10 for 10, beat every single time. And, some of the beats are pretty narrow, like a penny here, a couple pennies there, but consistency is what I look for in this. And they're just in the right spot at the right time, the right partners. I just think this is one of those easy money plays, but you don't want to go too big because it's at 88% right now. So This is like one of the small returns, but you've seen people where, it's 98% and they're placing these bets just because they see it as like a free money play.
Exactly.
Next up, we have Costco, which is sitting at 82%. Now, again, this is one that I prompted Gemini to figure out, how it's done historically. And it's 9 for 10 in last 10 earnings reports. And I just look at when I'm going to Costco because, I've got 4 kids and a wife. My family's large. We're shopping at Costco for everything. And it's just been insane. And I've just kind of asked them, I always talk to the store managers because I'm just a very social person. And, there's just never a short time. I always ask, what's the best time to come here? They're like, there is none. It's just constant mayhem.
Any day that ends in Y.
Yeah. So, I always have fun. They're one of the largest retailers of pies in the season. So I'll be like, hey, how many did you sell? And I even hit Polymarket. I was like, we should have a pumpkin pie Polymarket. But I feel like this is one that's just, the bulk of their earnings and free cash flow is just driven by memberships. You see those constantly rising. Actual selling of the food is a pretty narrow margin of the business. It's basically like they're just looking to cover their headcount and overhead expenses with that. Everything else to them is free cash flow. So, I do also like this setup, and we've got it at, 82% right now. So a little bit better than you're getting on Broadcom.
I like that. But listen, your POV on Costco, I go to Costco. I don't have 4 kids. Recently now have a fiance, but I freaking love Costco, dude. Like some people hate when they go there. I go there and I'm like, there's literally everything in the world at my disposal right now in bulk. So I've got to like rein it in, but I'm probably the reason why they will beat earnings in terms of free cash flow, because I go there and we spend way more than we need to. But yeah, I think next time I go to Costco, I might just start asking really inquisitive questions and see if the folks in Chicago, management at Costco, have any idea. But definitely like the Costco call. And one of the pieces of advice you gave me early on was like, invest in the things you use, right? Like in the places you go, the things you do. So I'm all in on the Costco thing. And now I'm going to be very curious about Oracle, because I think you make some good points. Like if they miss 3 out of the last 4, could be some value there to go contrarian. So love that. All right, let's move on. We're going to spot another trap. It's a good segue. We both have identified a little contrarian opportunity in the NFL. If anyone has been paying attention, the Kansas City Chiefs are literally on the brink of not making the playoffs, and they probably won't. We'll just call it what it is. Like, they're 6-7. Their offense stinks. Their offensive line is horrible and hurt. Travis Kelce's washed. He's more worried about his wedding. If you guys don't know, people who are listening, Travis Kelce is going to get married to Taylor Swift I don't know if that's news. Did you know that, Joey?
My wife is a huge Swiftie. I've known the play-by-play of everything. So yes, I'm very, very informed about everything Taylor Swift. And I have a 10-year-old daughter that is a huge Swiftie. So I'm hearing it from multiple sources in the house.
There you go. I mean, I think this year, more than the last few, we've seen so much less of her at games because the Chiefs are just bad. So kind of respect to Taylor Swift. Like, I don't want to go see a bad product. Like, you can be my husband. You could be my husband, but I'm not going to show up to watch you get beat every week, right? So, so this coming week, AFC West matchup, normally dominated in the past by the Chiefs. The Chargers go to Arrowhead, and right now I'm going to open it up. Right now, the Chargers are somehow underdogs. I mean, I'm talking about bad form. Bad form the Chiefs have been playing in.
See, and we talked about this earlier this week. I just found it fascinating that the Chiefs were such massive favorites for this game. Not only are they playing horribly, but Justin Herbert and the Chargers are playing great. They just got Amari and Hampton back, and he didn't have the best game last night, but he showed, he seems healthy, and Vidal is still very good. So I just think, the Chargers look great. Their defense looked great. And you got the struggling Chiefs that I don't know the current status of Rashee Rice, but he took a pretty nasty hit. Mahomes, he was doing great the first maybe 8 games, but he seems to be struggling of late. And Kelce seems to be showing his age. He is an absolute legend, but he's old. So he tends to fade later in the games. And is this the 14th game he's playing of the year? Is that getting to him at this point? And I feel like they are.
Yeah, man, I think this is an opportunity to go the other way. The market right now has Chiefs to win 67%. So pretty significant value, I would say, at the moment to take the Chargers. Again, winning at Arrowhead, no matter what, is really hard. I think they showed a little vulnerability against the Texans this past week. So I think a lot of what is baked in here is like the Chiefs kind of like legacy and a little bit of like they're going to win eventually. I don't know if that's necessarily true when you think about the injuries and a lot of the reasons you mentioned, right? Kelce's a little older. He's not as explosive as he used to be. They really don't have a running game between Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. Neither of those guys has had, significant rushing yards throughout the year. So I don't know. I know we both kind of said it offline, but I'm kind of looking at the Chargers here pretty intently, man. Like, I think the Chargers have a good opportunity to put a stranglehold on this. And obviously, I think the Chargers are playing for a little bit more, right? Like, they're not completely out of the AFC West race. The Broncos are sitting atop at 11-2. But if the Broncos fall to the Packers this week, there's opportunity looming for the Chargers. So I just think the motivation... Saw the game on Monday Night Football. They kind of handled the Eagles if it weren't for a couple turnovers by Justin Herbert. Now, I guess if you were trying to figure out a reason why the Chiefs bet makes more sense, Justin Herbert's left hand is broken. He did manage that last night. So if that gets any worse or if they hit him and he ends up out of the game, you're probably going to want to take your money out of that market. But that's the beauty of prediction markets, right? I think once you get in a situation like that on other sports betting sites, your cash out just disappears. So definitely opportunity in that game coming on Sunday between the Chargers and the Chiefs. All right, next segment. We are moving on to our case files. A very interesting story brewing in the media world. Will Netflix close their Warner Brothers Discovery acquisition by the end of 2026? Big news. That came out recently, a merger potentially with 2 humongous legacy brands. I used to work for Warner Brothers Discovery. I got friends over there who are kind of panicking because you just don't know what's going to happen in a major acquisition like this. So I know you've been really tapped in, Joey. Would love for you to set the scene. And it sounds like there's a little bit of a posturing play coming from the White House that could throw a real wrench into this thing. So let the people know.
So this is what's fascinating. So first off, Netflix, there's a bidding war for Warner Brothers, and Netflix ends up winning this, and it comes out, around $27.75 per share. Then Paramount Skydance, rather than backing down because the deal was agreed to, they basically made this hostile takeover offer. But in their commentary, they were saying that they were supposed to be able to know, or they were supposed to be able to make a competing bid after Netflix, but they never really got that chance. So the timeline goes December 5th, Netflix and Warner Brothers agree to the deal. Then Sunday, December 7th, Trump basically says, this could be a problem. I think that was the exact quote. And then the hostile bid from Paramount Skydance comes on Monday. Now, the most fascinating part of this is then there's an SEC filing, and you see it on Twitter, where Jared Kushner is part of the deal, or part of the takeover offer with Paramount Skydance. If you're not familiar, Jared Kushner is Donald Trump's son-in-law. So you see where, a lot of this is complicated.
There's a little bit of a conflict of interest there, potentially.
Yep. And then we get a story today, I think out of the Wall Street Journal, where Larry Ellison reportedly told Donald Trump that this would be bad for competition if Netflix and Warner Brothers were to combine. And I think the estimated market share was like 30 to 34%. So, this would be the number one player acquiring what I think Warner Brothers is the number two player. So it was one of those where, it's a fascinating situation. So when I'm looking at, will it close the acquisition by the end of 2026? That is a good market where you could say no. But there's also another one where who will close the Warner Brothers acquisition? And you have Netflix, Paramount. Paramount's actually the favorite at 43%, Netflix then at 39%. But what I'd be interested in is just doing the no on Netflix at 62 cents. Because I think if, first off, the DOJ should be a problem with two top three players trying to merge. You look at that when AT&T tried to buy T-Mobile way back in the day, and they just don't let these big deals happen anymore. Then you mix in, the problem with the White House specifically. I just don't think Netflix gets this deal done. And I think they'll have to pay that $5.8 billion breakup fee to Warner Brothers. But it will be interesting to see kind of what happens with this deal, even in the next weeks. Like, do they even wait for the DOJ to block it? Or do they just call it quits like you saw Adobe do with Figma, 4 or 5 years ago?
Listen, I think there's a question that I have just listening to your breakdown, and it's like, do you think Warner Brothers is like, we'll just take the money, dude, and we don't even need to worry about it. Like, you guys do what you got to do, because obviously this is a cash flow thing, right? Like, this merger potentially would really shake up the media landscape, whether it's streaming, movies, everything really. Like, they'd have control of so much. So do you think that's in there, baked in a little bit? Like, Warner Brothers in a spot where if they do end up breaking up, they are going to acquire a lot of cash.
We'll see. And that could definitely be part of it, where, if they saw Netflix's proposal, including the $5.8 billion breakup fee, and didn't even really give Paramount Skydance the chance to do it, because in the back of my mind, I would know if I'm Warner Brothers, there's no chance this gets through the DOJ. It would just be, you can't have one person controlling a third of the market.
Right.
Not like this. If Warner Brothers back in the day were like a 2% market share, like maybe that gets through. But a deal this size, I just don't think. And I would almost put this on Netflix's management. Like, why would you even attempt this? Because you're basically setting $5.8 billion on fire.
Yeah, that's kind of what it sounds like to me. I mean, like, just as a consumer, obviously most people do have Netflix. As a sports fan now, I kind of have to. They're having NFL games on Christmas, all kinds of stuff like that. They're dipping into sports a little more than they had been in the last 7 years. So definitely something I use. But when I think about Warner Brothers Discovery and all of the entities within the business, like I said, I worked there before, specifically at Bleacher Report. Where do those kind of like vertical or portfolio brands for, the next 10, 20 years, however long the deal is, where do they fit into this, right? Like, am I going to be watching Bleacher Report on Netflix? Like, that's a little down the road if it does actually come to fruition, but fascinating stuff with Netflix and Warner Brothers and, Paramount, Skydance. Like, I'm curious to see how this all nets out because, like you said earlier, right? Like, there's pressure from the companies themselves. There's also pressure from the White House. There's some conflict of interest. I feel like Netflix, Paramount, and Warner Brothers Discovery should just collab on a movie about this entire saga whenever it wraps up.
Well, I mean, we've kind of come full circle because, we were talking about Oracle in the earnings segment. Larry Ellison is the majority owner and the founder of Oracle. His son, David Ellison, is the one that's leading the Paramount Skydance bid. And so, Larry Ellison, once he made this $500 billion Stargate deal with OpenAI, Oracle, and the United States government, he has a direct line to Donald Trump.
100%.
And Donald Trump's son-in-law has a direct line to him. Plus, then you factor in that they easily have justification to block this because the companies are just too large. Like everything about this deal is just fascinating.
Yeah. It's almost like it's a show. Isn't there a show that we watched? It's kind of like Succession. Nah, it's not that much like Succession.
So a lot of people
it's kind of like it though.
A lot of people on Twitter are trolling David Ellison, saying this was an episode of Succession where he's basically calling his dad for help, and it's not the best look, but I don't envy David Ellison. To have your father be who he is, like, yeah, you can't live up to those expectations. So, I kind of feel bad for the amount of trolling, but again, it's entertaining.
It's entertaining, and we'll see definitely soon how it shakes out. All right, last segment, and we're going to wrap these shows every week with a little segment that we like to call What the Poly, because there are some crazy markets on this site. So first and foremost, let's kick this thing off. There's $900,000 worth of volume in a Polymarket that is asking the question, how many tweets will Elon Musk send from December 9th, today, till December 16th? Currently, no tweets. And the leader in the space right now is between 260 and 279. If you had put money in this market last week and you look at this and it's December 9th and there's no tweets, but you need to get to 260, how are you feeling right now?
You know what? The most fascinating part about this, I've used the term fascinating far too many times in this episode, but just looking through this, that's all that can come to mind. For the December 2nd to 9th, $19 million of volume on that. From December 5th to 12th, $5.2 million of volume. I thought this would have just a tiny amount of flow, but the amount of people and the amount of dollars going into how many times Elon Musk tweet, incredible. Just degeneracy at a whole new level.
It's unbelievable, man.
But what do you do in this situation? Do you just start tweeting at Elon Musk, trying to prompt him with ideas? Or
bro,
do you
get active, start cooking, dude.
If you take a low number, are you just hitting spam on every post he makes, hoping he gets blocked?
Oh my God, it's so funny. I mean, this is one of the coolest parts to me about Polymarket and these prediction markets is you can kind of price anything. It's pop culture, it's people's tweets, it's futures, it's earnings, it's sports. The possibilities are endless. We haven't even touched on crypto. We're going to have to get our guy John Morgan on one of these episodes so we can dive into the crypto markets. There's simply just so much to kind of look at and, dissect. So we will keep an eye on all of the stuff we've referenced. We will very much keep an eye on Elon Musk's Twitter. This kind of tells me too, he's got so much influence, on many levels, political, obviously Tesla. Now we're just talking about if he wakes up in the morning and had a long weekend and is just trying to binge on some tweets, that's going to pay somebody's bills potentially. So we will keep an eye on Elon's Twitter account. But
if you had to pick one, which one are you going with?
Oh, if I'm picking, now knowing what I know, whatever the lowest option is, I'm gonna go 100 to 119.
Wow.
That's not the lowest option because I know something tells me, and we've been told separately, right? Assume everything is rigged because I don't know if you can call it inside information. This is linked to this dude's Twitter account. So if he sees Polymarket, he knows that if he goes over a certain amount, a lot of people are going to get paid. I think he will be tweeting, this is the end of the year. Is he going to do a holiday program for any Tesla shareholders or roll out any new kind of cost saving discounts. Probably not, but there's a lot of opportunity in the holiday season to get active. So I'll go 100 to 119.
Man, see, I'd go significantly higher. I feel like with everything going on with SpaceX, it's supposed to be valued at $800 billion in the secondary market. Maybe there's some downturn. I don't think he ever takes a real vacation, but
no,
I think he wants to drive value of his platform. And then I saw news, it's like the number one news app of every country worldwide. I think he's got a lot to talk about. And I love the number 33. So I would go 320 to 339, which the only problem is it's a 9% chance. I was hoping to be a little bit lower, but yeah, I just think he knows it's the number one app because a lot of people want to see what he's saying and amplify it. So
right.
I think he'll always be committed to tweeting as much as possible just to, grow the value of his own platform.
Maybe right now it's still 0 because he's just asleep. But he doesn't also look like he sleeps very much. I'm going to start to really tap in and look at his cadence, look at his replies, see what he's getting into, who he's talking to. I feel like you could really dive in on this one. So we'll have to kind of circle back and see where this ends up when we get to next week's episode.
So we do have to preface that we're recording this at 12:40 p.m. on Tuesday. And this is saying it started counting tweets at noon. So Eastern time. So it should be.
So we're just getting started.
Yeah, it should be 40 minutes deep. So maybe this just hasn't refreshed yet, but I'm just hoping he just comes out hot. Rampage, 50, 60 tweets.
I feel like he has to have some sort of program, or he's using desktop. This is not easy to do on your handheld device.
You really think that man is sitting at a computer at all? I picture him just on the run all day, or it's kind of like a Trump situation where you could see a video where he's telling his team what to tweet. Maybe that's what's going on. He's got like a team of people and he's just rapid fire, tweet this. Maybe
we need a Hard Knocks 24/7. Maybe we don't. We actually probably don't. We don't need that kind of access to Elon Musk. But this has been fun, brother. I'm really looking forward to doing these weekly, diving into Polymarket and these prediction markets. It's going to be a blast. And stay tuned. We do have a True Odds social handle, so a lot of the content from this episode will be on social from that platform, from our personal platforms, and obviously the StockTwits handle. So any final words? I know that I'm going to get myself off of here and start putting money down on the Chargers. I'm feeling really good about that one.
No, so we definitely want to hear from the audience. If there's any specific Polymarkets you want us to break down, send them our way, whether it's social handles. You can find our emails on StockTwits. We're all over the place. If you have something you want us to break down, send it to us. But no, I'm just excited with this. It's finally launched, Deal in Motion. I put this plant behind me specifically for this because I didn't have any life in this room. Notice the little avocado picture right there. Maybe it's a shout out to Zuckerberg. He's got a new AI program, Avocado, coming out. Maybe that was some foreshadowing. But no,
there we go.
This has been great. I so look forward to launching podcasts and the days here. This was a great first episode and one take, no edits.
One take, well, somebody else is going to do the edits. But for Joey Rockets, I am Mikey Markets, and this has been True Odds.